Welcome to the Steve Stine Guitar Podcast, brought to you by GuitarZoom.com. If you want to improve your guitar playing, keep listening. If you want to improve even faster, go to GuitarZoom.com, where you'll find all of Steve's premium courses, masterclasses, and memberships that'll help you quickly and easily improve your playing. Now here's your host, Steve Stine.
Hey, Steve here again, and what I'd like to talk about today is a little bit off topic, but it's still very, very important. It's your guitar tone. When it comes to playing various different styles of music, certainly the blues is an incredible topic to talk about for this. You need to think a little bit about your guitar tone. You know, what I find with teaching a lot and talking to people is that they have a tendency, because our brains are wired to think about what we're practicing and all those sorts of things, you know, scales and licks and all these different things, we forget to think about the tones that are actually being created by our gear and certainly our fingers, right? Now, this conversation is going to have to do more with gear and less about fingers, because that's a little bit harder topic to discuss. But let's just talk about gear for a little bit. Now, right now I'm using a Paul Reed Smith here, okay? And I'm using what we call a VST, which is a plugin for a computer. And right now what I'm using is a thing called Bias Effects, B-I-A-S, Bias Effects. And it's made by a company called Positive Grid. Now, I'm not trying to sell you the product. I'm just telling you what I'm using so you can kind of get an idea of where my sound is coming from. So if I was to play with my volume, my tone, and all the way up, and then my pickup, my toggle switch, okay, I've got it all the way down in this position for this pickup. So it's got a bit of grit. Which is kind of a good, you know, straightforward kind of rock and roll sound. You know, not too much distortion, that sort of thing. But if I wanted to kind of get creative with this, what I always do, the first two things that I always shoot for, number one is my volume, and number two is my toggle switch, okay? Now the volume, if you notice, if I turn it all the way up, and I'm going to play some blues licks, right? That's a pretty typical tone for me. I actually really like the sound of that. Okay? But the volume for me is something that I use a lot when I play, because if I roll back that volume, I can clean up my tone a little bit. Because what I want you to think about, there's two things that are going to happen here. Number one is the way I adjust my settings to get a different kind of sound. There's all kinds of things we're going to talk about today. And the second thing is the way I approach my dynamics when I play. So right now my volume is all the way up. I'm on the neck or the bridge pickup all the way down, getting maximum flow through the guitar into my computer. So let's just talk about dynamics first before we even move into talking about the volume. So volume's all the way up. But what I have to remember is when I play, I can do things like this. Okay? That human dynamic of learning how to pick softer and louder can make a really big difference in the outcome of what it is that you're trying to play. Sometimes you don't need new licks. Sometimes you do. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just need to change up the way you're approaching what you're playing to give it more of a human element. Okay? So again, with the volume all the way up, you'll notice I turn my volume down whenever I'm talking. I always turn my volume off, and then when I'm ready, I turn it on. So just so you get used to what I'm doing there. So if I've got it all the way up and I'm playing, okay, so the amp that you have, the setting that you have it on, the guitar that you have, all these things are going to make a difference in the way the guitar actually sounds overall. But I'll give you a couple little hints to think about. Generally, not for everybody, but generally, people have more distortion on than they need when they're trying to do things on the guitar. Doesn't mean that you're doing that. I'm just saying, in general, people tend to have more distortion than they really need to be able to execute whatever it is they're trying to do. Now, different styles of music require different, amounts of distortion and, different ways we solo and things like that, or different ways that we play. So right now, you'll notice I really don't have a lot of distortion on here. Okay? So you can really hear the notes as they're being played. And the nice thing, too, is you can hear the responsive dynamics as I play softer and louder. Okay? So that's the first step for you is learning how to possibly change. Again, we'll get into treble and bass and all that stuff in just a second here, too, but understanding that distortion doesn't have to be like over the top all the time. You can back off that distortion and sort of try and hear more of the guitar and the strings and everybody at work, and not just the distortion. I'm not saying I don't love distortion, I do. But right now we're having a conversation about blues, and it depends on the style of blues I'm playing. If I'm playing more of a hard rock blues, I might have more distortion. I just want you to be aware that there's a dynamic element that you might be missing if you're not really thinking about it. And that first step to dynamics begins with the way that you're picking those strings. Again, volume is all the way up. But if I pick it softer, I get a different kind of sound. Now, the second step to this is rolling the volume back a little bit, rolling it off a little bit. So instead of going all the way up, I tend to drop it back. And now it cleans up a little bit more because that volume is rolled back. So you can still hear the dynamics, but when I get to the top, when I'm really getting aggressive with my playing, it's cleaner. Now I'm going to turn it back up. Now this is a trick that a lot of people, a lot of famous guys, if you will use, is that they'll back their volume off just a little bit, and that will be like their main rhythm tone. And then when they go for their leads, they'll turn up and get that little bit of boost. And then when they're done soloing, then they'll back off their volume a little bit. Now, it's more of a feel thing than anything. Like, I don't look down and go, I'm on, there's 4. Whoop, I gotta get 4. I don't do that. I just feel the distance. So, and I use my ear. So if I'm all the way up, if I want less, I just drop it back a little bit more. If I want a little bit more, I bring it up a little bit. So I'm going by how it sounds through the amplifier as I'm playing, or through the speakers or whatever it is you're using. Okay? But there's already a big variety of different sounds that I can get by playing dynamically, playing harder or softer in different places, and adjusting my volume just a little bit, backing it off a little bit, to get some cool sounds. See? Okay, so those are two things that I use a lot, all the time in my playing. The second thing is the toggle switch, which changes the pickups and the configuration of what's on and what's off. Now again, all guitars are different, the way that they're set up. Some guitars have 2 pickups, some only have 1, some have 3. And again, your guitar, you need to figure out what it is in terms of the sounds that you get from your guitar. But if I just take this one right now and I'm going to use this position, which is the bridge position, and then I'm just going to show you one other position. I'm just going to pop it up one, okay? So it moves into a bit of a single coil kind of sound, and you'll notice the difference. So here's this one. Here's this of a sudden it gets quite thin when I move into that second position. Okay, instead of being all the way down, I popped it up just one spot. So again, I'm here, it's all the way down, it's the bridge position, and I'm just going up one from there. So you can see there's a difference in sound. Okay, so if I was playing over something that started off really, kind of mellow, I might be in that second position. And then as it gets more aggressive, then I move down into the first position, the bridge position. But I might have backed off my volume a little bit. So again, there's lots of really great combinations that you can use. Now I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't use my tone control. I just don't. A lot of players do. And if you do, have fun exploring that too. For whatever reason, in my entire career, I've never been a tone control person. So I don't change my tone control. On this guitar in particular, the tone control is way back here anyway. And maybe that's why when I was younger, I just never really used it. But the tone control never became a big part of my playing where, I've heard like Jeff Beck and some of those players use a lot of their tone control, and I think that's wonderful. It's just I never have. So all of my sound is coming from the varieties of things that I can do with my volume, and then my pickup switches, changing where my pickup switch is, and the way that I'm approaching the dynamics that I'm playing, you see? So if I'm playing something that's more aggressive to begin with, see? And what's really nice about that is the less I have to rely on pedals for everything that I do, the more I can do things within the context of my hands and my guitar, the more I can control it. So if I'm on stage, I don't have to be in front of my stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't times I need to switch pedals or switch channels or something. Of course I do. That happens. But just because I want to lighten up a little bit, I want to clean up a little bit, doesn't mean I have to switch channels. It could very well just mean I'm just backing off a little bit. So I'm here. Again, now you'll notice I have a little time to switch, right? So I'm... Doom, boo, doom, boo, doom, and...
If you're enjoying this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, go to GuitarZoom.com and consider becoming a premium member. There are 3 memberships to choose from. VIP, which gives you instant access to a library of short but powerful courses as well as new bite-sized lessons each month. There's also Play Songs that gives you step-by-step lessons so you can learn to play your favorite songs fast. And finally, there's Masterclass, university-level training on everything from soloing to music theory, from blues to home recording. For more info about these memberships and all the premium courses available to you, go to GuitarZoom.com. Now back to the podcast.
So you'll notice right there, I switched to, again, I know you can't see it very well, but I switched down to my bridge pickup, and then I backed off my volume just a little bit. Okay. And now I get a completely different kind of sound. So these are things that I want you to really start thinking about. You don't need to go crazy with this. You don't need to do 50 different things. Maybe step 1 is you just take a look at your amp and go, what kind of music am I playing and what kind of sound am I trying to portray here? Is my distortion set appropriately for what it is I'm trying to do, or is it just set where it always is because I never think about changing it? Maybe that's a good place to start, right? And the second step is again, I don't want to go into a great detail on bass and middle and treble, but for the most part, guitar players don't need an incredible amount of bass. The bass response isn't really the biggest thing that a guitar player needs, because if you're playing with other musicians, you got a bass player and drummer who's got a kick drum and toms and all these things. The bass isn't the most important part. Doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean that you want to roll it all the way off. Every amp is different. Marshalls tend to have less boomy bass, where if you're playing something like an Orange or a Mesa Boogie or something like that, the bass is quite a bit more responsive on those. So every amp is different. I'm just saying, in general, guitar players don't need the bass turned all the way up. That isn't really the frequency that we're looking for. What we need are mid-range frequencies. Again, if we roll the mid-range all the way off, it tends to make our sound very distant. The mid-range is a frequency that electric guitar players certainly need to be able to cut through a mix if you're playing with a band on stage or something like that. The mid-range also is the part that exposes you as a guitar player when you play, because people can actually hear you. If you roll the mids all the way off, you can do all kinds of stuff on your guitar and the audience will never really hear you anyway. So it's kind of one of those things that you sometimes see people do when they're nervous or something like that, or just inexperienced in general, and they don't really want to be heard. If you turn your mids off, you're not going to be heard as well. Okay? If you turn those mids up a little bit, that frequency is going to cut through. People are going to hear you better. And again, different amps have different responses with mid-range. Some amps have a lot of mid-range, and some amps aren't very responsive. Okay? And then you've got your high end. And again, high end, it all depends. But 0 and 100% probably aren't the only two options that you have. I usually tell people, start with everybody at 50%, and then just mildly adjust as needed if you need to. If you find yourself having to turn everything all the way up, either your approach is probably wrong, or you might have the wrong amp, right? Because you really shouldn't have to do that. You might need to tweak it a little bit. You might need to adjust it a little bit, but just think about that. Again, just food for thought on this blues journey that you're trying to figure out how to get great blues tones with your rhythms and your leads and things like that. So this particular sound that I've dialed in, especially if I go here to that second position, I just love that sound. I just really like it. And then when I need my leads, maybe I turn my volume up all the way. Or if I haven't been soloing and now here I come, maybe I have that volume all the way up and I have that toggle switch all the way down, the pickup selector all the way to the bridge pickup. See, and then I can start using my dynamics of my fingers a little bit. So that's the first thing I want to show you. We're going to bump this up a little bit. So if that kind of makes sense, mess around a little bit, and then when you're ready, come on back. Okay, so let's continue. So now what I've got is a little bit different sound. This one's going to be based more off an Orange style amp, where the other one was a bit more Fender. Okay, and what you're going to notice is, let me go all the way up on both of those again. It's a different kind of sound. It's a different kind of tone, and I really like this one. It's a bit, the way I've got it set right now, there's a little more high end. The mid-range is a little more aggressive. And I just love it for cutting through. And again, I'm going to do all the same things I did on the last one. I'm going to bring it back up if I need to. See? So you can hear on this one too. There's a little bit of delay back there. A little bit of reverb. That's about all I ever need, unless it's, something really dramatic, in some sort of lead that I'm doing. The way I always think about delay and reverb, For the most part, again, there are specified times when I'll have more or I'll have none. But for the most part, what I like about it is that I like to set it so it's not intrusive. It's not louder or as loud as my actual tone. So when I'm playing, what you hear most are the notes. Okay, when I stop playing, you hear a little subtle, and usually I only like about 3 of them. 2 or 3, somewhere around there. And it's gone. So it just wettens things up a little bit, but it doesn't get in the way. And this one, this particular sound that I've got right now, the reverb is quite low. You know, it's in there. There's a little delay. So it makes for a nice little lead tone. So if I've got something going... position. Again, I'm down all the way. Now I get more. So it gets bitey then, which is really nice. I don't always start off my solos that aggressive because I might be, kind of edging into it, and then as I keep going, then it's going to continue to get more aggressive as I go. Depends on the song, depends on the situation, depends on what the band is doing. But I know all of these things are available to me, which is pretty cool. Okay? So again, keep messing around with stuff. Keep taking notes if you need to and just get some ideas. And when you're feeling good, I'm going to give you another example. All right, so what I've done now is I've gone to a different setting. Okay, another one that I really like. This one's got a lot more reverb. So you can hear there's a little delay, a little kick of that delay. But there's a lot of reverb. So again, this is a specified thing, but it really is nice to make your solo sound a little more lush. You see that? So I would certainly use something like this. Again, I don't always use this much reverb, but I like the sound. It sounds really nice. See? So the cool thing about effects are if you learn that if you can hone in the power of an effect, whether it's delay or reverb or chorus or whatever it might be. So in the general sense, so it's not overpowering your tone, it's adding a new element to what it is that you're doing that makes you think different and it makes you feel different. With this much reverb, the nice thing is that I can stay a little more spacious with my playing and don't feel like I have to fill so much space because the reverb is filling that space. So it tends to slow me down a little bit. It makes me think more melodically because I don't have to fill the space. Like when there's no reverb or no delay, when I stop playing, there's nothing. It's just, there's nothing there. But now if I play something, you see, it's filling that space. So it's kind of a cool thing that way, okay? And I think effects can be very inspiring to a player. Again, just as you might get really bored with playing the same shape or the same pentatonic shape or whatever it is you might be studying, but tone can do the same thing. I'm not telling you got to go out and buy new gear and buy a new guitar. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying there are things that you can do with the stuff that you already have to make some big changes in the way things sound. And if you need to add a little something here and there, you need to go out and buy a delay pedal or whatever, maybe you do. Maybe that would be fun for you. Maybe that would be motivating for you and inspiring for you to try something different. I just want you to be aware of all these things because I find a lot when I'm teaching people, and I've taught people in the past, that the last thing they think about is, they'll grab a different guitar because they haven't played it in a while. That's usually the reason why someone will grab a guitar. Not because it has a different sound or it has a different feel, but because they just haven't played it in a while, or the tuning's different or something like that. And then the amp is even worse. Like usually, it's not, most people don't have 30 amps laying around. So you only got 1 amp or, maybe 2 or something like that, which is what's nice about, computer plugins is there's all kinds of different cool stuff that you can do, and it's all built in. But even if you just had the amp, there's still a lot of stuff that you can do to tweak it a little bit to change the sounds of it, and then understand that the primary change is going to come from here. The amp is set so, when you hit your maximum on this guitar, that's the sound you're going to get out of the amp. If you back off on here, you're going to get less of whatever that is. You're going to get less volume, less distortion, less whatever it might be, less aggression possibly. As you back off your volume, back off your picking, change your pickup selector switch or toggle switch, whatever you want to call it. All those things are going to make a big difference in your playing. So it's worth thinking about a little bit. So what I'd like you to focus on is really becoming aware of that area of guitar playing. If you don't really think about it very often, because it can be, like if you were a songwriter, and this goes into a whole other topic of conversation, but different sounds and different effects and things can get your brain on a completely different wavelength, where if you just plug in and you have the exact same sound every day, it's hard to really get creative with that because it always puts you in the same realm. It puts you in the same space. So it's worth thinking about it a little bit and see what you can do with it. Remember, don't use settings, effects, all those sorts of things to try and hide. Instead, use them to enhance whatever it is that you're trying to do. I have some friends that get really big on effects and they use a lot of effects. And sometimes there's a great place for that. Like if you're writing a particular song and it's got a particular effect or a delay thing or a flange thing or a chorus thing, again, it puts you in this cool space. And when you play that, it's we kind of, it reminds us of that song, you see? So there's lots of different ways that you can use it. I'm going to stop talking here. I want you to work on this a little bit and see what you can come up with. And if you do come up with something, post it. Post a video of the tone that you've been exploring and let me hear it. I'd love to hear it. So take care and practice hard. Next time on the Steve Stine Guitar Podcast. Today, I just want to start off because I get a lot of people asking about rhythm stuff. So let's just talk about what a 12-bar blues is today, okay? So basically, 12-bar blues means 12 measures. So you have a 12-measure sequence that gets repeated over and over and over. And basically, if we look at the fundamentals of blues, we're talking about 3 different chords. We're talking about what we call the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. Now, the 1 chord, if we're in the, let's say we're in the key of G, for instance, the 1 chord would be G. And then the 4 chord, what we're going to do, and don't worry about your theory and all that kind of stuff right now. Just real basically, let's just count up. G, A, B, C. Okay? In music, we have the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There's no H or something like that. So as we count up, we're going from G, then we go to A, because that would be the next note. There's no H. So we start all over. A, B, C. So the C chord would be your 4 chord, and then the D chord would be your 5 chord. Hey, Steve Stine here from GuitarZoom.com, and thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, can I ask you a favor? Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Your feedback means more to me than you'll ever know. And be sure to check out my YouTube channels where you'll find over 1,000 videos to help you with your guitar playing. Thanks again for listening. Stay positive, keep playing, and keep having fun.
If you'd like some help with your guitar playing but you're not sure how to get started, go to GuitarZoom.com and look for the Help Me Choose survey. By answering a few simple questions, you'll get Steve's personal recommendation of the perfect course for you. All this and more is available for you at GuitarZoom.com.